So, following day 4 of the second test between India and England, it's time to ask George. Now, we'll be producing these videos from every day of the 5-test series between India and England, and you can submit your questions at any time just through our social media channels using the hashtag AskGeorge. Now, you can read all of George's exclusive content from England's tour of India and so much more from the rest of our team by signing up to the Cricketers digital offering for just $3.99. You can do so in the video description where the link is fine, so there's no excuses there. Now, let's go on to our first question, and that's from Danny, and they ask, what lessons will England have learned from this game, or is learning lessons for non-baseball nerds? Hello, George, what say you?
Hello. That's a good question, isn't it? I think that there are some lessons they'll learn, but, you know, for example, if you're thinking that they won't still try and hit the ball over the top and they won't still back themselves to play that style of cricket, they're not going to change that. But there are some things they've learned. I think they are fitter going into this series than they were going into the Ashes, and that's something they've learned, isn't it? And I think that there has been some sort of maturation of the way they play at some of the time. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be a radical change or anything. Look, they lost this innings. They lost this game in their first innings. They did fine today. They did fine on day 1. They did fine on day 3. They didn't score enough runs in their first innings. If you're in India, you are putting yourself at an incredibly big disadvantage if you concede 140-run first innings deficit. And you know, what did they get? 250 odd on a pretty flat wicket. Not enough.
Mark Ridley asks, have England missed a big chance here? They won't face a weaker India team who are missing key players.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I don't know when Jadeja and Mohammad Shami are coming back. There's some, speculation that we might not see them this series. And I think that, we're not absolutely certain to be seeing Virat in the third test either, maybe the fourth. So there's a bit of that sort of thing still up in the air. But you're right, other players, Rahul should be back, for example. India are absolutely not at full strength. And therefore, you would think they're only going to get stronger. So, yes, probably England have missed an opportunity. The one thing you'd have to say, though, is that Bumrah is brilliant. So even when I say England didn't score enough, I mean, you could argue completely coherently that they weren't allowed to score enough because they're bowled out by Bumrah. And then, you got Jaswell's brilliant innings. I mean, to get 200 but no one else gets 35 is pretty extraordinary. And Shubman Gill, really consolidated things when India batted again. So it's not all about England not taking the opportunity or England not playing well enough. It's that they're not allowed to play well enough. But the basic question is right. Yeah, India will have some players who are not going to be long-term international cricketers, you would think, in this side, and they'll only get better when other players return. Yeah.
And yet, had you asked England at the start of the series, what would be good going into the third test or going into the break before the third test, and anything that wasn't 2-0, they probably might have accepted. So therefore, in the context of the series, surely it's not all doom and gloom, even though the individual circumstances of this test perhaps dictate.
No, of course it's not. No, not just that, but they've shown they can compete and they've shown how they will compete. They're going. It's two sides punching hard at each other. It's really entertaining. There were moments today when you wondered whether England could do it. I think they've done pretty well, really, on the fourth day. I mean, it's the highest score an England side have ever made in the fourth innings in India. It's the second highest score any visiting side's made in the fourth innings. I say again, I don't think the problem was today, although there were a couple of odd moments, but I don't think the problem was today. Yeah, and you're right, 1-1. It's a lot better than it has been in some other series.
Tom Rowell asks the next question and says, is this our way of playing mentality Stokes and Baz have put in place detrimental to how Root should go about his own innings?
Well, it's a really good question. I can't give you a yes/no answer. I think that Root's dismissal today, which looked ugly, took his average for batting in the fourth innings under this management to 99. It's not so bad, is it? So I think if you go through the stats, they would suggest that Joe Root's, not playing so badly. But yet there is a sense that he has been derailed a little bit. I think what he would say is that he initially was trying to find a way, was trying to impress a little bit, was trying to show that he fitted in, and also trying to support his friend Ben Stokes. But that also, he's the sort of player who always wants to improve, who always wants to get better. And he has been finding his tempo for a while. And yeah, there have been times when he hasn't got it completely right. But I just think if you look at the long-term stats, they're not so awful, So I think we've got to be a bit careful. I say again, it looked bad today. I'm going to say what I said the other day about Zach Crawley. I didn't think it was a very good shot. I didn't think it was a particularly good shot selection. It certainly didn't come off, but they would argue that he's trying to hit it over the top, change the field, and then he can milk the bowlers. And if you're of the view that his sort of reverse scoop over the field for six, over third from the opening ball of a test day, was a good idea, and you praise that, then you probably have to take the rough with the smooth a bit. But yeah, I mean, he was a brilliant batter who didn't need to change very much. His great quality was getting off strike, rotating, scoring quite quickly without necessarily any of the big shots. And it seems that he's trying to play some bigger shots. I don't know. The story's not over. He's finding a way. I don't think his finger was relevant today. That's what they tell us. He tried a shot and it didn't come off. I wouldn't read masses into it.
Does Stokes' non-dive and slow running indicate an injury concern? That's from Sushant. How did you interpret that run out?
No, we spoke to him after the game, and he's fine. He's in good shape. The knee is. I mean, do you remember the catch he took off Hartley? Was it Iyer? Mid off, running back to long off, really. It's fantastic. His knee's good. He said he had grass burns on his knees for the first time in ages because he's been able to dive. So no, it wasn't that. He just screwed up. He just made a mistake. I wonder whether he was blinded by the bowler or the umpire or another fielder. I mean, it looked dozy as all hell, didn't it? But it was very, very out of character. Hey, and a little reminder, the basics of the game: always back up, always run the first hard. But these things, they're instilled for a reason, and he's brilliant at all that stuff, and he got it wrong.
And he had been hit. I think folks had hit him on the foot, hadn't he?
He had.
Not that long
Absolutely
before.
Right. Back it up.
You don't see. We've seen Ben Stokes grimace a bit. I think that's about as much as it gets with him sometimes when it comes to showing pain. And he did show sort of visible pain there when he got hit, but there was no feeling that was that he was still feeling the aftereffects of that.
No, look, he did say something about it was one of those weird things. We felt like he was in a dream, and his legs were moving, but he couldn't make them move as fast as he wanted. We've all been there.
Yeah.
I can tell you I went for a run last night and had very much that sensation. And it's a lot hillier here than you think, by the way. And he just got it wrong. I don't think it was injury related. He seems to be in a really good place with that. If you look at it back, he dawdled the first 4 meters or so, and then realised he was in a bit of trouble, and couldn't get up to speed. Really, it does happen. I wonder if he was slightly blinded and because of that, a wee bit complacent about what he needed to do. He just got one wrong. He's obviously a really good cricketer. I mean, to some extent, these things do happen, don't they?
Uni Akhtar asks, were England's spinners more impressive than India's in this test?
Oh, yeah. That's an really interesting question. I mean, Really interesting. If you mean did they bowl better, I would say no.
Mm.
If you mean did they bowl better in proportion to their lack of experience and their expectations, then yeah, good question, maybe. Because they did sort of team up and do pretty well. But I thought Kuldeep troubled people. How does Kuldeep get the ball to keep so low? I mean, what's going on there? I thought that Ashwin's a funny bowler, isn't he? He's a competitive little fella. Um, I say he's a funny bowler because he is obviously a genius. He's one of those bowlers that sometimes looks better on TV because you can see what he's doing. And so from where I'm sitting, 120 meters away or whatever, he can look quite plain, you know. So, but he's obviously brilliant, and that 500th wicket is just around the corner. So I wouldn't say that England spinners bowled better, but the fact that you've asked the question is sort of reflective of the fact that I thought they put in a really good performance as a unit between them. And remember that Joe Root didn't bowl very very little in the second innings, so they didn't have that to fall back on. And I thought they're all growing in stature every day, really.
One feeling that struck me today, I think, actually, when things should have been really, really tough, is there's no feeling that from 2021, when England were essentially skittled out in 2 or 3 days in a couple of those concluding tests, that's going to happen this time. I don't know if that says more about how that England have a better plan, or whether that's just that India's spinners aren't as on it as they were, or the conditions aren't perhaps
Well, I think
maybe it's all
I think the pitches are. Well, no, I think it's mainly the pitches. I really do. I think if you put Axar Patel on those surfaces again, he'd be a nightmare.
Mm.
I thought Hartley's an interesting one. I know obviously he wasn't there, but Hartley in the first innings is struggling a bit. And in the second innings, he's just bowling and getting good rewards from what he does. And I think it's because in the first innings, his stock ball isn't troubling batters enough. But in the second innings, when there's a lot more help, his stock ball's really good. I really do think the conditions are wildly different from 2021, where they were extreme. That's not a moan. It's just, I think most people would accept that the conditions after the first test in that series were extreme. So no, I think England thought they were coming for a trial by spin, and they've actually got a trial by Bumrah, and it's very, very difficult to play.
Will Calling asks, how about dropping Bairstow so I think England, can fit another seamer into the lineup? We've got a week and a half, so there's a lot of water under the bridge to come, and we don't know how players are going to come through. But how do you see the 11 potentially shaping up for the third test?
Well, I thought the bowlers did pretty well, so I'm not sure why you would weaken the batting when the batting didn't do very well. But I would say this: if Harry Brook came back tomorrow, and he's not going to, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that he's about to come back. I don't think we expect to see him this series. But if he did come back tomorrow, it'd be Johnny Bairstow that went, I suspect. But do you want to? I thought the balance worked in this game. Jimmy Anderson had a lot of bowling to do. Are there moments when Ollie Robinson or someone would have been useful? Well, yeah, for sure there were. But Rehan Ahmed took 6, I think, in the game. Useful against the tail. He's getting better all the time, really. Has something about him with the bat and in the field. I don't know. It was the batting that failed. It would seem to me to be odd to weaken that. One thing they might have done today is change the order. Once they put Rehan in at 3, which I'm not a fan of, to be honest. I know that everyone else in the world seems to be, but I'll tell you why I'm not. You end up with Ben Stokes at 7 and Ben Folkes at 8. And Ben Folkes at 8 is neither use nor ornament, really, because he is a builder of an innings. And I think you don't really give him a chance to play a useful part in the game unless he has some batting behind him, below him. And, 2 of the batters below him are modest. So I would have thought that if you're going to put Rehan at 3, you have to put folks above maybe Stokes and Bairstow. Does that make sense? I think, and it does make sense, I think.
Do you want to address the Rehan Ahmed idea that he came in at 3, played pretty, tried to play expansively yesterday. Why are you not
Well, because it
subscribing
means
to
that you've got folks at 8 then, and that's so. Folks is an accumulator, and that's fine. Got no issues with that. But if he's left with 9, 10, 11, he doesn't really have time to accumulate. You ask him to play a game which is not particularly natural to him, which is to be more aggressive. So that's why I don't think it's a particularly good idea. I never liked, I always thought that if you've got a session of play where you want someone to see off the bowlers, you're better to put a batter there than someone who's, a part-time batter. But there's nothing against Rahan, and I don't doubt his positive intent and all the rest of it. But you just create a problem elsewhere. Is how I see it. Anyway, that's all. So I would have put folks ahead of Bairstow and Stokes.
Let's sign off with one from Jack Rule, who asks, are we all agreed now Zach Crawley is the best opener England have produced since Sir Alistair Cook?
Well, he's sure trending in the right direction, isn't he? I mean, he looked absolutely fantastic in both innings. Really, what's he get? 150 in the match? What's he averaging since the start of the Ashes? 55, maybe more? Yeah, it looks terrific. I'm trying to think who else has done it since then. I mean, various people have. I don't know. He might have the highest average at this point. What's he averaging? 33, maybe? Which would put him in the category, by the way, of people like Mike Gatty, maybe, Alan Lamb, Ian Botham, John Crawley. People above maybe Hick and Ramprakash. It's not that bad. Bearing in mind he's opening the batting against some very good bowlers. So, yeah, he's growing all the time, and it's good to see, isn't it? And I suspect there's more to come. As a thought, I can't think of anyone. This is strong. He plays fast bowling really well. I mean, fast bowling. I'm not talking about bowling that moves laterally or anything else, but he seems to play fast bowling as well as any English player I can think of. Just fast, not, Robin Smith, Graham Gooch, whoever else you want to mention. I don't know. He sees it early. He seems to love pace on the ball. He hits fast bowlers in front of square a lot. There's a lot to like about Zach Crawley. And he had a very good game. And maybe he is. I hadn't thought of it in those terms. Maybe he is the best Sims cook.